Okay, so let's start our discussion and let's look at REST API today. We will introduce REST API and then we will look at a little bit of theory to understand what is REST API, and then eventually we will move on to the automation part of it. So we are going to look at, we have already looked at SOAP. I mean, there is still some more topics remaining in SOAP UI. I'll cover them maybe later. So REST we look at, and then look at the architecture of REST, and then we will look at REST assured, that is used for automating REST API, and later on we will also look at Postman, how as to how we can use Postman to do automation of web services. Okay, so if you will go to this blog here on the website, if you will go to this link blog, and under that if you will click at API automation, under this category there are few uh, blogs that are there. So let me take you to one of the blog. We have already seen this one, but anyway we shall look at it once again today. So this is the one which we looked at in the very beginning, or our first and second sessions of API automation. So what are web services? All this we had covered. Today I am going to talk about what is REST here. I had looked at SOAP earlier. Okay, so as you will remember from REST API, sorry, SOAP API automation, that there was a definite or a specific protocol that needed to be followed when we were using SOAP API, right? And the protocol was that there was a structure of the REST uh, message that was going as request and response, plus there was a higher level of complexity and more bandwidth was required, and there used to be a digital file and all those stuff was there. So the summarization is that it was a little difficult to get to know the various WSDL files, the details of the WSDL files, to make use of SOAP. Okay, now in order to make all of this difficult, in order to overcome all of this difficulty, a new web services came into picture, and it is called as REST. Now what is REST? REST was created to address the problem of SOAP. Therefore it is more flexible architecture. How it is flexible, we are going to have a look at it in some time. Okay, then as opposed to SOAP, REST is not a protocol but an architectural style. What is architectural style? I will explain in some time. Now REST architecture lays down a set of guidelines which you need to follow if you want to provide a RESTful web service. For example, stateless existence and use of HTTP status code. So what is stateless existence? I'll talk more in some time, but briefly, stateless style means that when you send a request from the client to the server, right? So I have talked about it earlier on also, that the status between the client and server is not maintained, meaning that when client sends a request one to the server, it forgets, the server forgets who the client is. So this is known as stateless. I'll just talk more on this in some time. Okay, then it consists of only loose guidelines and let the developer implement the recommendation in their own way. So so it means that when a developer is building a RESTful web services, they are told that okay, you have to follow some of these guidelines, and once you follow this guidelines as specified, it becomes a RESTful architecture. Okay, now one important part, which I mean maybe some of this which I am telling you theoretically might not become clear immediately, but don't worry, we will get into details of that in some time. Then it allows different messaging format, meaning like if you want to transmit data between client and server, there can be multiple formats. You can transfer data in HTML format, as you can see here, right? HTML format is there, JSON format is there, XML is there, plain text is there, right? While in the case of SOAP, only XML data transmission was allowed, right? Now what is JSON? I will show it in some time. I believe we know what is HTML and XML file, right? Now REST is also more lightweight architecture, so RESTful web services have better performance. So this is one important statement which differentiate REST and SOAP, right? Because of it, it has become incredibly popular in mobile era, where even a few seconds matters a lot, both in terms of page load and revenue, right? So so honestly, when web services got started, initially it was mostly SOAP, right? But if you will do little bit of research, you will see that nowadays most of the web services, they are basically all getting written in RESTful web services or REST web services. Okay, so now let's understand a little bit more of RESTful web services. Okay, now REST stands for representational state. It's an architecture style. I mean, it is not a protocol, it is not a guideline, it is a specific architecture which has to be followed. So it's an architecture style that defines a set of recommendation for designing loosely coupled applications that uses HTTP protocol for data transmission. Now, what does it mean? It means that so let me go to my drawing board. So as you can see, and as I mentioned here, that it is an architectural style, meaning that it's a architecture. Okay, and we have already seen in our initial discussions of web services that in the case of web services, two applications are loosely coupled. I can have one application here, I can have another application here, right? So two loosely coupled application can communicate with each other. So that is what we are trying to achieve with the help of RESTful web services, and the protocol, underlying protocol, is still HTTP. HTTP, and I have already talked about HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, right? Then instead, now REST doesn't prescribe how how to implement the principles at lower level. Instead, REST guidelines allow developer to implement the details according to their own needs. Web services built following the REST architecture style are called RESTful web services. So I'll talk. I'm pretty sure that maybe I'm pretty sure that some of it might not have become very clear just now, but don't worry, we'll go through one more document which will make it a little bit more better with respect to our understanding of what is REST and what is architecture style. Okay, so just now for the time being, let's look at some constraint. So when I was saying that it has to follow some rules, guidelines. Okay, and once you are following those guidelines, those principles, the service which you are building becomes a RESTful architecture or RESTful web services. Okay, now these are some guidelines which you need to follow. That to create a REST API, you need to follow 6 architectural constraint. That is uniform interface. Okay, what does it mean? It means request from client should look the same. For example, the same resources shouldn't have more than one URI. Now, what is a principle of client server architecture is that client sends a request, right? And so I send a request and server sends a response back. Now, one principle one states that if you want to access a resource, for example, here, if I copy this URL here, right, and if I copy it here, it means that on the connect to tech.in on this path, I only can have one resource at this address. As you can see here, this is the address, as you will see, right? This is the address, right? So first principle states that there can be only one resource at one URI. URI is uniform resource uh, identifier. Okay, then next is client server separation. What does it mean? It means that client and the server should act independently, meaning that my client here, which is a browser or which is a mobile or whatever it is, and server has no dependency. Not even 0% dependency is there, right? I mean 0% of course is equals to nothing, but there is no, they are completely loosely coupled. There is no relation or no binding or no overlapping between the client and server. Then it is stateless. Now what does stateless means? As I was just mentioning, there shouldn't be any server side session. Each request should contain all the information the server needs to know. So it means that when I send a request from the client to server first time, the request goes and response comes back, and client will, sorry, the server will forget who the client was. Now if C1 sends the request back again to the server would have forgotten or would not know who the client is. So this is known as stateless. Fine. Now then how does the let's say in the first step I just logged in, right? Then if I have logged in, if I send the second request, how will the server know that this is the client who logged in previously? So during the login it will send a token back. It is some token or ID, you can call it. Okay, so when the client sends the subsequent request to access a resource on server, it will send the token along with it. Token is sent from the client to the server, and this is how it knows, right? But but there is no session or no I mean no session maintained on the server for a given client. Okay, so this is one main principle or rule when you are building RESTful web services. Okay, so that was regarding stateless. Now cacheable resources. Okay, now server responses should contain information about whether the data they send is cacheable or not. Cacheable resources should arrive with a version number so that the client can avoid requesting the same data more than once. Now what does it mean? It means that when the client sends a request, so suppose this is a client sending a request and getting a response. Now you might have observed that let's say when I open this website for the first time, maybe it takes a little while, right? Now if I subsequently load this again, I refresh F5, it might really get loaded very fast. Now why is that happening? Is because when the client sends a request to the server sends some information back to the client stating that this particular resource which is at this URL, it can be cached, CACHED, cached on the client. If in this case the client is browser or the client can be a mobile or something else, right? So if it can be cached, then if I'm requesting same resource as you see here, right, the client does not have to go to the server. It will just serve the request which is already cached in the client or in the browser, right? So that is what is called caching mechanism, or that is how caching basically works.
So it's a kind of like a short-term storage in browser, you mean?
Yes, yes, yeah, that's right. Sometimes you if you enable, I mean, it is something which the developer has to enable for caching to happen successfully, so that you don't have to do round trip every time from the client to the server.
Uh, so the data that comes back basically gets stored in the local whatever in terms of like local memory of that browser, right?
Yes, that is right. It is cached on the.
So if I right, and what if we clear the cache? Like
Then it will go right. Then it will hit the request.
yeah, okay. So
And
it's like
and it's optional, right? It's optional. Developer can like have option to block this caches,
Yes,
right?
yes, that is right.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have layered system. What is layered system? That might be several layers of servers between the client and the server that returns the response. This shouldn't affect either the request of the response. So what does it mean? It means that it could so happen that when a client is sending a request to the server, okay, so when a client, for example, is sending a request to another server, let's say this server, which in turn is sending a request to another server, which in turn is sending request to another server. Okay, so I send a request here, it sends here, it sends here, right, and responds like this, and then I get it back. So from the end user's perspective, it shouldn't matter. It should be the same request and so on response. Let's say this is Amazon Web Services, for example. Okay, we are using Amazon. Now today Amazon is servicing a particular request based upon all these options as you see here, right? What if they change it to contain only, now instead of having this, they will only keep it as let's say they will only keep two. I mean, they don't have this third one anymore. This is gone, right? And this is also gone. So if this is gone and this is gone, from the end user's perspective, nothing should change. The UI will remain same, the request URL will remain same, right? So that is what it is trying to say, that irrespective of the layer or layers of architecture, the it should not affect either the request which goes from the client to the server and the response which comes from the server to the client, right? And code on demand. Now this is optional when it is
Naresh,
necessary.
one thing. So will it if I remove something like a server, if I'm removing, so will it not affect the time of response?
It may affect, that is right, but the thing is, even if it does get affected, you will you can verify it by if you have written some test cases. Okay, time, of course, see, there are two things. One is that response which comes back should remain same, which is same in this case as I stated.
Yes.
If time changes, you might have some time constraint. Remember when we were doing the SOAP UI testing, we defined a time limit of in how much time we should get the response back, right?
Right. Yes.
So if your time is changing and if it is not falling within the limits, then your test cases will start failing and you will know of that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it may increase or it may decrease also, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it has been removed, server has been removed to improve the performance. That is also possible, right? So it is both ways.
Okay.
Yeah. Then code on demand, when it's necessary, the response can contain executable JavaScript within HTML, the client can execute. So this is just an optional feature available. Okay. So any service which follows these guidelines and principles can be called as an RESTful web services. Okay.
Naresh, can you once explain this statelessness once more?
Yeah. So statelessness is, see what happens when you send a request from the client to the server. Suppose client sends a request to server. Okay. So let's say you log in into your LinkedIn account. Let's say I log in into my LinkedIn account and this is I'm in LinkedIn. Fine. Now, if I am in LinkedIn, first time what I did, so if let me log out from here, sign out, it's here. Okay, let me log out. So once I give my user ID and password and I sign in, so this is what I'm, first I'll do step sign in, right? So let me sign in. Now this is a HTTP application. I'm using a, maybe underneath it might be using a web services or what. Okay, so if I sign in now, after that if I click somewhere or start browsing, let's say I'm start to browsing. Okay, now after the first request of signing is done, the server does not know who the client is again, but when after the sign in, when the next request comes in for browsing, during the successful sign-in, client would have sent a token here to the server, for example, and in the subsequent request, when the client sends a request to the server, it sends the token. Okay, and with that token, the server identifies who the client is, and then it will know whether this person is logged in or not, right, Pallavi?
Okay. Okay.
Right? Think so. If suppose I am using Gmail, okay. Now,
Yeah.
stateless protocol means request goes, response comes back, and server does not know who you are.
Okay.
But to identify you again, you when the same browser sends the same request, the browser will send a specific token. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
and with
Okay.
that
And
token,
how, sir? how long this token is maintained in
Okay,
a
so
request?
there are different mechanisms available. Like sometimes it can be like 5 minutes, half an hour, or sometimes it can be few days. Like remember, sometimes you log in into application, you will say remember me, so it will remember you
Yeah.
for a month or so. So that is something which can be implementation specific, but it's like how long your session is valid. In banking application, timeout is 5 minutes maybe, or 2 minutes
Right.
of inactivity. So that is also session, right? So how
Yeah.
much time it is valid, it will depend upon the kind of application you are using. Like Gmail, it can be valid for days as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that was regarding. Now there is one more link I wanted to take you people through. So this is little bit more discussion on. Okay, did I close that? Okay, so please, I will just explain a couple of things here, but if possible, try to read up a little bit by more on this by yourself. Okay, so some things, maybe few of this I have already talked about, but I will still formally discuss some more of them. And then once we have a little idea of all this, maybe we will try to jump into building automation code for this. Okay, so this is at Guru 99. Feel free to read from here. In by coming week, maybe I'll try to put it on my website as well. But for now, we'll look at it from this website. So, what is RESTful web services? REST is used to build web services that are lightweight, maintainable, and scalable in nature. A service which is built on REST full architecture is called RESTful web services, right? So what are the architectural principle? I told you that when you comply or follow these principles or rules or guidelines, you tend to build a RESTful architecture. Now the underlying protocol of HTTP is HTTP, which is the basic web protocol. REST stands for representational state transfer. Now one good article on my website here you can read is what are web services. I am not sure if I have taken you through this one, but if not, uh, so a quick distinction between REST and SOAP, if you will look at here. Now this diagram is really a nice diagram I found somewhere on internet, and so I have put it here if you will see, right? So what is REST? REST writes directly on HTTP. What is HTTP? HTTP is a host. Okay, so on the top of HTTP, which is the protocol REST, write directly on HTTP. It is plain and simple. In reality, it is all you need to send data from point A to point B and get the required response, right? Catch is until something that represents a service contract is put into the place, it is kind of anything. I mean, meaning that you can transmit any form of data, and it is very simple. You need to go from point A to point B. You get on a host, and the host is just HTTP, right? But if you will, if you will, use SOAP cache the coach is your SOAP. So Sandeep, do you remember that there was a request response, what you say, messages getting transmitted, there was a header, there was a body, and all those stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that is this coach here, right? So apart from that data transmission, there is the message header, body, and all that stuff. So therefore this is the coach which you need to move from one point to another, from client to the server, right? So coach is your SOAP envelope. It wraps your data. Main strength is the presence of contract, the WSDL, and we had seen that WSDL had all the details of the implementation of all the methods, right? Now it gives you control of easily generating artifacts. The catch is look at the complexity. So you, with the SOAP, you end up introducing more complexity, whereas REST, it is pretty simple, straightforward. Just send the data which you want to send and get the response back in the required format, right? So you can read up on this one if you want to read more. So let's look at uh, okay. So now I'll just read this statement. REST is a way to access resources which lie at a particular environment, meaning that I mean if you want to access this resource, and this resource as you can see is a URL or a resource on my website. If you type this, it will give you that resource back, which is by this name REST versus so. Right, this is the resource. So REST is way to access resource which lie in a particular environment. For example, you could have a server that could be hosting important documents or videos, pictures, etc. Right? All of these are example of resources. If a client says, say a web browser needs any of this resource, it sends a request to the server to access these resources. Now REST define a way on how these resources can be accessed, right? So let's understand some of these terminologies which will be useful once we get started with our automation. So first is a resource. What is a resource? The first key element is the resource itself. Let's assume that a web application of a server has records of several employees. Let's assume the URL of the web application is this is the URL. Now, in order to access an employee record resource via REST, one can issue the command, the website name, the employee resource, and the ID. So this is, it means that this command tells the web server to please provide the details of employee whose employee ID is 1. Does it make sense, Kirti? Kirti, Anamika, Pallavi, Sandeep, Smita, clear so far?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm accessing a resource which is an employee with an ID 1. Now request verb. What is a verb? Verb is an important thing to understand. So if you will remember some time back, or not some time back, but when we were looking at what to say, beginning of our web services, I introduced to you what are, there are various HTTP methods as well, right? Now, if you will go to HTTP method, there are a lot of methods I talked about, right? Like get is there, post is there, put is there, right? So there are a lot of methods which are available to transmit data between client and server, right? So keeping that in mind, verb is some action that you are going to perform in the RESTful uh, application that you are making use of. So these describe what you want to do with the resource, right? A browser issues a get request verb to instruct the endpoint that it wants to get data. What is an endpoint? Endpoint, this resource which you, this URL which you type in the browser is also known as endpoint. It also known as end, POINT, right? So a browser issues a get request. Now get is one of the methods which are available, or one of the HTTP method. So here you can see get method is used to retrieve information from the given server using a given URI. Request using get should only retrieve data and should not affect should have no effect on the data. Now as a good programmer, or I mean that is not something you have to worry about, but I being a good developer, what I have to do is that I have to write my get request code in such a way that it only gives me the message or the resource. So for example, if you will type this URL here, okay, it will give me this page, but when the page is getting returned from the server to the client, it should not write a code to make any changes on the server side. I mean that is the optimistic what I should say, optimistic approach when you are building your coding or application using whenever the get request is going from the client to the server. But developer might not follow it, that is another thing. But as a good principle, get should only fetch the resource and not do any change. So a browser issues a get verb to instruct the endpoint it wants to get data. However, There are many other verbs available like put. So put is put, post, put, delete. So post is when you want to post data from the client to the server. Put is you want to put some data, or delete when you remove some data. So in case of examples, this the web service actually issuing a get verb because it wants to get the details. So you have let's say if you have a get request for this particular URL, right? So what will happen, you're getting the employee details with the ID one. But if you have delete for this, so same resource will get deleted from the server side. Does this request verb make sense to all of you guys, girls?
For questions regarding endpoint, I don't know if it's like we can talk about that further after finishing this, or you want to talk
Yeah,
to?
so we can talk now. But endpoint is the resource which you are trying to hit on the website. That is called endpoint in RESTful web
So,
service.
so endpoint, like not always one endpoint. There will be can be the multiple endpoints for same one web service, right?
Yeah, so when you hit employees, so okay, so as you see this URL, right? So yes, that is right. So if I say here, I'm saying employee or single employee, I can say employees, right? So
Right,
employees, so it will give me multiple. So endpoint is one, this is the URL, and this endpoint is the URL. Response which comes back can have multiple records, right?
right.
Yeah, so endpoint is still a resource or a URL that you have typed here. Is it clear?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So then there is something called request header. These are additional instructions sent with the request. This might define the type of response required of authorization detail. So once we look at our coding and our use of Postman, you will see that request header is when you send a request from the client to the server, right? Client to server request is going. So there is a header I have already talked about in when we were talking about SOAP, right? So header is some additional information which you want to send from the client to the server, and the header can contain your user ID and password to maybe log in into the server, right? So that is the header. I mean, you can have different headers, but this is one basic. So when data is sent with request, data is normally sent with a request. When a post request is made to the REST web services. So like get method is there. There is a post method also. When is post method used? So suppose you have a form and you have a lot of fields in there, and you have a submit button. When you submit this data into the web service, you have to make use of postful web services or post web services. This is the method. So it will post the content of this request to the server and you can store. So this could be like adding. So maybe I'm saying some URL slash add, right? So what this will do, it will go ahead and add the employee in the system. Is it clear, guys? Post. Sandeep, Smita. Okay, great. So that is regarding in post call. The client actually tells the web service that it wants to add a resource to the server. Hence, the request body would have the details of the resource which is required to be added to the server, right? Then what is response body? This is the main body of the response. So in our example, if you query a web service via this URL, the web server might return a XML document which contains all the details. So response is the response which you get back from the server to the client, and then if it is employee details, you can display the details, right? So that is the response. And then there is HTTP status code. This is also very important. So if you will simply Google HTTP status code, let's say for REST API, we'll say right? So you can go to this link if you want to. So if you will go down here, you will see that when a request goes from the client to the server, so I'm sharing this link with all of you. So when a request goes from the client to the server, there are some status code which is written by the server to the client. So if it is 200, it means everything is gone, everything is all right, right? When it is 201, you have created a resource on the server, right? 202 is accepted, 204 no content, move permanently. So a lot of times, so let's say if I can actually do it here, method, I don't think here we will get the status code, but I will show it to you in some time. Yeah, so 404, can you see this, all of you? And let's search for 404, 404. That the page is not found, right? So this is the status code, right? Meaning that when the response is coming back from the server will also send back a response code which helps us understand actually what has happened on the server side, and based upon that response code we can verify whether everything is gone or everything is working fine with respect to with respect to the request that we have sent from the client to the server, right? So that was regarding the codes. So going back here, so okay, this I have already talked about. So oh, I was looking at this one. Yeah, here. Okay. So then what are RESTful methods? The below diagram shows mostly all the verbs. So I have already talked about post, get, put, delete, right? So if you are requesting a resource, you can say employee or slash employee one, right? Or when you are post, when you are using post method, you are posting or creating a new employee. When you are saying get, you are getting the details of maybe one employee or all the employees. Put is used to update, I mean updating an information. Delete is to delete a resource. Okay, now a quick understanding of why do we actually go for RESTful web services although we have SOAP. Okay, now RESTful mostly came into popularity due to the following reasons. Now heterogeneous language and environment, this is one of the fundamental reasons which is same as we have seen in SOAP. So I mean in the beginning session, maybe first or second session, I told you that the reason to go for web services is so that we can make two heterogeneous environment written in completely different programming languages to talk to each other, right? And then it enables web applications that are built on various programming languages to communicate with each other, and with the help of RESTful services, the web application reside on different environments. Some could be Windows and Linux and all that, right? So but in the end, no matter what environment is, the end result should always be the same, that they should be able to talk to each other. RESTful web services offer this flexibility to applications on various programming languages, right? So you can read more of this if you want to do. Now maybe okay, for example, if you look at this, Facebook, Twitter, and Google expose their functionality in the form of RESTful web services. So this allows any client application to call these web services via REST. So you can write a web application and maybe write or access the Facebook application. So maybe Sandeep Smita Pallavi, sometimes when you are registering into an application, right? So in that what happens that it gives you an option to log in with Facebook or Gmail, right? Yes, no? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And how is that happening? It is happening because what your browser or your client can do is that it can make REST call to the underlying web services with the ID and the password and hit that and then get logged in. Okay, So you can read more on this. I have already talked about architecture, like what is statefulness, what is client server, right? Principles. So I have already talked about this RESTful client architecture, what is statelessness, what is cache, layout system, right? All this I have talked about. If you want, you can read more on this from here. Okay, so I will share this link with all of you. I'll put all these details on my website maybe in the coming week, but for now you can use this particular link. Okay, now what we will do is, is it clear so far? Anybody has any doubt on what is RESTful web services? Any question? Anamika, any question for me?
No, thank you.
Okay, Smita, Sandeep, Pallavi.
Oh, yeah, Naresh, I have a question.
Yeah.
Regarding that, you were saying normally we write the contract. So can you little bit summarize the contract, like
Okay.
what a specific contract is?
Okay. So in REST we don't have a contract, but in SOAP we have contract, right? So so uh, do you know what is an interface?
Yeah,
Please tell me, what is your understanding of interface?
interface of any app, right?
Yes. No, I'm asking you from the point of view of Java programming. So you know interfaces in Java?
How you like talk to like different applications,
Yes. So
right?
yeah. So you have actually answered your question. So interface is like this, and I might have talked about it when we were looking at JDBC. I think so you were not there in JDBC. So, okay. So uh, let's say which interface? Okay. This is your application, right? Now, uh, let's say your application has want to talk to, or okay, let's take a different example. Suppose you want to open a bank. Let's say Bank of America. Bank of America is there. Bank of America. Oh, give me some name. So, what is your name? Bank of Anamika. Okay, suppose you want to open this bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you will do, so you will approach maybe US government and ask them that that you want to open a bank. So they will say, okay, you can open. There are two minimum functionalities you have to provide, which is debit and credit,
Mm-hmm.
right? People can deposit and withdraw in from the bank. Other than that, you can give other loan facilities, this facilities, that facilities, right? So what it means that you as a bank have to comply with some rules guidelines, which is debit and credit, which has to be fulfilled by you, right?
Right, right,
So this is a contract which is binding on Bank of Anamika, and if you do not fulfill it, then you don't become a bank. You
right,
fulfill it, you become a bank, right? So contract is some rules guidelines which has to be followed if you want to be a bank, right? Or anybody else who comes into business wants to follow this rules guidelines, which is called contract. So this contract needs to be fulfilled, isn't it?
right. So for
Similar.
rest also we have contract, right? So if I want to like request certain kind of data, then what they will be provided and
No, so that is not a contract.
okay, okay.
Contract is when you have to. so so when we were looking at SOAP follows contract, wherein you need to have a specific method names to get called, right? And the API of the methods which you can call.
Okay.
Remember when we were, we did not look at the code, but I
Mhm.
as a service provider of SOAP web services. So if you will remember, there used to be a WSDL file, right?
Right.
There was an implementation of just, let's say, get employees, right? It had, let's say, ID, right? So for example, this is a contract which has to be fulfilled by the service provider, so who is implementing SOAP. So he'll give implementation of the logic of how to get employee from your database, for example. Okay, and
Right.
this gets registered in your WSDL, and the client will look at the WSDL, and then after knowing the the signature, you can say get employee by passing the ID 100, let's say, and you get the response back, right? So for this method, which was get employee with an ID, it is a contract which has to be fulfilled by the SOAP web services, okay, to become a web service, for example. Okay, okay, I don't think it is clear very much. I will explain with another example. Just 1 minute. So technically, when you know what is an interface, right? In Java, yes, Anamika,
Right. Right.
you what is an interface in Java?
Like when you are talking to the like different files or different.
No, you are giving me a generic definition. You know technical definition of interface?
I don't think so.
Okay, let me give you an example of interface. Okay, just 1 minute. My Eclipse is starting. So meanwhile, guys, please start your Eclipse, and while my Eclipse is getting started, what I will do is I will share one link with you. So, okay, so while my Eclipse is coming up, what you people can do is please go to this link here. Okay, and from this link, please download this first zip file. So rest assured 330 distribution.zip. So I'm sending this link on the chat window, or I'll put it in WhatsApp also, both the places. So please open this link and start downloading this particular zip file. Click on this and it will get downloaded. Okay, so let me explain what is a contract. Just give me a few seconds. My Eclipse is starting. Okay, so let me
So what to download from that Git link which you shared?
the first zip file.
Okay.
Okay, so let's understand what is a contract. Okay, so let's say maybe Sandeep is in India and Pallavi is also in India. So Sandeep, you want to go and open a bank, okay, and you want to open a bank with the name HDFC, and Pallavi wants to open ICICI, right? So what you will do, Sandeep, you will go to maybe RBI, yeah, and you will ask for permission from RBI to open the bank, right? And Pallavi will go and ask to open a bank called ICICI. So what RBI says, okay, you can open a bank, but it is mandatory for you to provide debit and credit functionalities. Debit plus credit, right? Now, when that happens, what in the term of programming language, you create an interface. Name of the interface is bank, open bracket, close bracket, and you give a method call it debit. I'll make it public void, public void debit, and then I'll say public void credit, right? So debit amount I can give if I want. How much amount you want to IMOUNT and INDAMOUNT. Now suppose Sandeep opens an HDFC bank, so he'll create a class HDFC implements. So do you know how you write code for interfaces, Anamika? Hello.
Yeah, I did way back. I
Okay,
forgot totally.
fine. Then
So it's like it will.
you have a class which implements a bank interface, right? Now, when you do this, since you want to become a bank, you have to implement an interface. To implement those interfaces, you have to give definition of these methods, debit and credit. So I can click the shortcut here and generate the code for that. Just 1 minute, add an implemented method, right? Now when debit and credit are implemented in the class, what you are doing, when I say you, what Sandeep is doing as an HDFC bank, he is fulfilling the contract which is provided in the interface called bank, right? Or he is following certain guidelines to become a bank HDFC. Is that right, Anamika?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So similarly, in the world of programming in web services, if you remember, there was a SOAP. In the SOAP, there used to be a contract which has to be fulfilled by the implementation of that contract. Okay, so this is a concept of contract in in any programming language or in Java specifically, where you define rules and guidelines, and anybody who wants to become a web service has to fulfill that rules and guidelines as has been prescribed in the interface.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's about the what is a contract. So I have shared this link with all of you. Please start your download of this first zip file. Okay, and what we will do, we'll take a first break for 10 minutes. We'll come back from the break and we'll start with automating our web services using REST assured. Okay, so let's
I have downloaded.
okay, yeah, so if you have downloaded, we'll still go for break. We'll come back for
Naresh, one thing, I downloaded, but just showing me an error, and there is some virus, so it is getting deleted automatically.
um just 1 minute. Okay, I don't know then what I can do. At the best I can put it on Google Drive for you. Maybe you can downloads API. Okay, I have the download with me here.
Okay.
I mean, at best I can just put it on the drive for you, and you can.
No, even same for me, Naresh. She's right. Even I'm facing the same issue.
Okay, so then what can we do for this?
Let me try again. See. This time it's allowed me.
Okay, Pallavi, try
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, I'm also trying.
Did it? What about Sandeep, Smita, Kirti? Are you able to download?
Yeah, I downloaded.
Okay, fine. Okay, so Pallavi, are you able to download now?
Yeah, it's running a
Yeah, it's
security
fine for me.
scan. So
Sorry?
it's running a security scan.
Okay. I think so it should work. I just downloaded in front of you, right?
Yeah.
It's Okay, so let's then reassemble after the break and we will continue. Okay.
Okay.
Do we have to unzip it in any specific
Yeah,
folder or?
no, I'll tell you what to do.
Okay,
Let's
okay,
come back from the break and I'll tell you.
okay.
Guys, girls, let me know if you people are back. Okay, others, please let me know if you are back. Okay, so let's start. So what we are going to do is, uh, we please open your Eclipse. Okay, and I will. Okay, now now what you have to do is, we will create a new project, file, new Java project. Okay, and give it any name of your choice. So let's say I will say rest hyphen assured, right? So, and I'll say finish. Okay, so after you do this, okay, so can you all please create the project name of any name of your choice? For the timing I have created, rest assured. All of you please do that and let me know if it is done. All of
Naresh,
you, yeah,
do we need to extract those
yeah, I
files?
will tell you what to do first.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Okay, everyone, can all of you please acknowledge if you have all created the project? Okay, what about others? Please acknowledge quickly. It should not take so long to create a project. Sandeep, okay, fine. I'm hoping Sandeep, you have also done it. Okay, now go to the zip file which you downloaded. Okay, and okay, yeah, actually, you people are right. Is my download done? Just 1 minute. Okay, my download failed due to virus detection, but I believe you have downloaded. So,
Mine, I haven't downloaded yet. I've downloaded 3 times and it's happening the same thing every time.
okay, I can share it on the, I can put it on the drive if you want, but I really don't know whether it will help. How to give it to you. Okay, I will try to zip it and put it my, okay, what to do, how we can. What about you, Sandeep? Are you able to download? Okay, so let me extract it. I'll put it in zip file. I'll put it on the drive and see if you can download it from the drive. Okay, let's try it like that. So I I'm not sure this will work, but at least let's give it a try. Yeah, I will just put it here. Rest assured there's 22 MB. Okay, so for the others for whom the download is done already, what happened? Okay, so once it is uploaded, I will share the link with you. So for the people who have done it, downloaded it, unzip it. Fine. After
I also have the same problem actually. It was downloaded successfully, but I don't see it in the downloaded folder now.
okay, maybe it okay
It's like
then
it
just
disappeared. Yeah, got deleted.
okay fine then let's uh, okay, so I'll share this link in that case. Can you please take it from this link? Can you try and download the link? Kirti, are you able to download?
Yes, I downloaded it.
Okay, please unzip it also. If you have downloaded, unzip it.
Yes, yes, I did that.
Now is it downloaded? Smita and Pallavi? Is the download done? Okay.
No, Naresh is giving problem. It's saying maybe dangerous and so not showing the zip, just showing the blank page.
No, this URL which I gave.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so just share your screen. Let me see what the problem you have. Share your screen.
Okay. Can you see screen?
Yeah, it's loading.
So,
Go to that link which I gave to you.
okay. is here.
Uh,
And you see, I click actually twice. So that's why one okay, I did okay. So if I will go here and I'll see keep.
okay. In that case, what we have to do is okay. So do one thing. I will put it in
Bitbucket.
yeah, so people can take it from there.
Yeah.
Stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
Okay, so let me put it in Bitbucket then.
After the unzipping is done, I see another zipped folder within that.
Yeah.
Is
So
that how it should be?
so
Or
who is that, Smita? Hello. Who was? Yeah. So
hello?
are you able to download now?
Yeah, I actually downloaded and unzipped the folder, but within that unzipped folder,
One second. One second. From the drive?
no, from the second link that you gave.
Yes, that is from Google Drive, right?
Oh yeah.
And what about you, Pallavi?
After unzipping the folder, I see a talks folder. Rest assured frequency looks like an executable file,
One second.
and
Are you
there
able
is
to
another.
download it? Are you able to download it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So,
Hello.
Navika, can you once
Yeah,
again?
Naresh, now I'm also able to download it.
Okay, fine. Okay. So all of you, once you download it, please unzip it. After you unzip it, you will have a folder like this. Okay, just 1 minute.
You stop sharing.
Just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just share my. Okay. So can you share your screen? Okay, go inside that. So you see just a show. Okay, fine. Okay. So now what you have to do is I will do it on Anamika's machine. So go to your Eclipse, Anamika.
Okay.
Create a new project and call it okay REST API. Right click and create a new folder.
We have to create a new folder, right?
Yeah, you have to create a new folder. Yeah, say new and create any folder. Yeah, just make it jar files or whatever name you want to give. Okay, finish it. Okay, all of you done up till here? Sandeep?
Naresh,
Okay, just
actually, after I unzip the folder, I see another zipped folder inside that,
Yeah,
which is
I'm coming to that. Wait. First you do this part. I will explain what to do after that.
okay.
Done, all of you? Hello?
Yes.
Guys, why are you people not responding today? Some of you are not responding.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, have you all done this?
Yes.
What about you, Sandeep? Sandeep, Pallavi,
Yes, I'm done.
Sandeep, what about you? Okay, we will move ahead. So go to that folder, Anamika, go to that folder what you downloaded.
Mhm.
And now go, there is one depths. Okay, so go to depths. Yeah, go inside that. Copy all the jar files. Paste it there.
Sure.
Wait.
Oh, okay.
Paste it here. Copy those jars, Anamika. We have done this number of
Oh,
times.
okay.
I believe. Paste the jars here. Paste. Did you copy them?
Yeah, I copied them.
Go back.
Cannot quickly.
Go back.
Okay. Copy and
Paste it.
cannot paste.
Give me the control. You are in the zip folder. You have to unzip it to copy it, right, Anamika? Can you extract this?
Yeah.
Yeah, do it here only. Extract. Go to that folder now. No, wait. That is also zip folder.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it also zip? Yeah, go inside that. There was below.
This is what I also
Yeah, open that
added.
folder. Go inside this. Go inside the steps. Now copy these files. Go back to the folder again. Windows Explorer. Go one level up and take that jar file also. Rest assured 330.
This one.
Yeah, copy that also. Others also please do this.
And paste it here.
Yes. Others also, can you please do it? Kirti, Pallavi. Wait, Anamika, don't do anything. Others also, have you done?
I was just checking if it's copied.
Can you expand that rest folder?
Is it done, Kirti, Smita, Pallavi?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
done.
Yes.
Can you stop sharing, Anamika? Kirti, have you done? Okay. Pallavi, what about you?
I'm also done.
Smita?
I'm also done.
Okay, fine. Okay, now after you are done with that, I am giving you one more jar file link. You have to download that also. That is test-ng jars. Okay, so let me quickly give it to you. Where is my project? Rest assured. I will give this. So this files also I am giving as a zip to all of you. Unzip it and put it in the same location as which you just created, right? So rest, rest folder or whatever you want to call it. So it is your wish, but copy those jar files because we are going to make use of test-ng here. Okay, so just 1 minute. So let me give the these jars also. I will. Okay, do the same with this link, which I'm putting on the chat for you, and get shareable link. Take the link from the chat window and download the zip, unzip it, and copy the jar files in the folder which you just created. Done, all of you? Yeah.
Narish, so there are only 3 jar files in that zip
Yes,
folder, right?
yes, that is right.
Okay, fine. Yeah, done.
Okay. So, Anamika, can you share your screen?
Sure. Yeah.
So select the first activation one and go to the end of the last jar. Click on press shift and select the last file. Yeah. So is the count 20, right? Everybody do select only the jar files. Make sure the count is 20 and now right click and say go to build path and click on add build path. Okay. So we are basically adding all the files into our class path and so that we can use it for our purpose of coding. So is it done by others also, guys, girls?
Yes.
Yes.
Kirti, what about you? Okay, fine, great. Okay, so basically what we have done is like we did a setup for the selenium or not selenium. I mean, so basically this was a setup for the jar files which we needed for working on REST assured for REST API automation. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is we'll start with some coding. So just give me 1 minute.
Should I stop sharing, Naresh?
Yeah, you can stop sharing now. Okay, I'll share my screen. So we are going to look at some examples. Theory, we have already seen good amount of theory. Okay, so let's get started with some examples. So let's say I open this URL. Now we'll try some practical examples. So if I will, let me close this. I don't need this. I will close all this. I don't need. Uh, okay, so let's hit this URL. Now, what happened? City. Yeah. So if you will see that when I type this URL, right? This is a GET request. I mean, I'm saying that. So remember when I was talking about a URL, where is that? When I was talking about URI, a universal resource identifier, this is the URI I type. Or what is that? Yeah. So I also talked about the uniform. Sorry, what is that URI? Just 1 minute. So if you will go to this link here, I talked about the resource, right? Anamika, right? Here I say that URL employee and I specify which employee I want, for example, right? Same way I'm typing here that I want to fetch from this web services weather of city, and if I specify the name of city, it will give me the city, what is the current temperature, what is the humidity, what is the weather description, wind speed and other things, right? Similarly, slash mumbai, sorry, it's mumbai, it should be, right? So it gives me the details of Mumbai, right? Now what we have to do is we should be able to basically validate this, right? So if you will remember in the initial discussion of our web services, I said that there was a client, right? Client could be your browser or mobile. It does a web service call. It could be SOAP or REST to the server, and you get the response back, right? So the response which is coming here is raw. Raw meaning that this is just data. Yes. And you have to validate what is coming back from the server irrespective of the UI or the client. So the data which is coming back is proper or not. You can then display that data either here or here. That is a secondary thing, right? So that is what I have talked about with respect to API testing. Okay. So now in order to do that, what all we can check? First of all, you have to create a request. So this is we are getting the data, right? So first of all, I have to create a get request. Then I'll get a response, right? So there will be a response, PONSE. There will be a header, right? Request header will be there. I talked about header, right? When the response comes back, there will be status code, right? So these are the things which some of the things which you have to verify. Plus, when the response comes back, and if you see information like this, how do you validate all that? That is what we need to validate when we make use of a REST API, right? Yeah. So let's look at our first example. So what I am going to do is I will call REST1. I'm creating a file called REST11. Now I have already told you how to create a test case, right? So get, I'll say public void get weather city WEATHER open bracket close bracket, and I'll annotate it with @test here, and this will make it test ng test, right? We have already seen test ng, right? People, Anamika, and so let's make it test case, right? And we have seen how we run it. Okay, now what we will do is, first of all, I will create a base URI. So this is my base URI. So if I look at this URI, which is universal resource identifier, right? So if I go here, up till here, city is the base URI. Okay, not here. This, where is that? So up till here is the base URI, right? And in that I append the city, right? So let's create a base URI using the jar files or the rest assured jar files which are there. So how do we do? How we say rest assured control space bar. Okay, somehow my system is very slow today. Rest assured dot base URI, right? And I'll make the base URI equal to it's a string. I'll copy this path up till here. So this is my base URI up till here. I'll copy it and I'll put it here. So my base URI is created, right? Now we have to create an object which is called request specification. Okay, with that request specification, we can send a request to the server. So there is an object called request specification, REQUEST specification. I'll call it REQ. This is request equal to REST assured dot given. So can you see it returns an object of request specification? If you want to know more on request specification, the best way is to take this, copy it, Google it, documentation, DOCUMENTATION. If you will go here, this is the Java docs, like the docs I shared with you earlier on also for Selenium. These are the methods available in that, right? So here you can see that this is an interface which allows you to specify how the request will look like. So basically, to put it in a simple language, this is actually used to create a request, for example, right? So I have got my request object. With this, I'll now actually create a request. So I'll say, okay, let's call it my specs, right? Now I will say request specs dot request. Now this is the actual request I am sending. So I'll specify, can you see method and URI here?
Mhm.
I'll choose the method, and which is my method, method dot get. So I'm sending a get request method, and which argument I'm appending double quotes Pune, right? So what will happen? It will send a request, get request to this base URI. I mean, this base URI will be appended. When I say append, at the end it will append this particular Pune, right? And when I get a request, what it returns to me? It returns a response. Can you see response object? So I'll put response equal to response, and then from that response I can say response dot to I'll get the body of the response, get body response body dot to string. Okay, and I'll try to display it string body equal to, and then let's just try to display sys out of body. Fine. So the response body which comes back, I convert into a string and I'm trying to display it, right? So let's try to run this program. So if I type this URL city/Pune here, it gives me, okay, let's try Mumbai for example. So I'll put here Mumbai. If I do Mumbai here, this is what I get here. Now let's try to run it. Right click, run as test ng test. So it says it is passed, and it gives us an output which is not really very useful for us for the time being, but don't worry about it, right? Yeah. So basically we have got the message back from the request that we sent. So let's only try this one. We will make some more changes to make it more user friendly to understand the details of the request that we are trying to send in. Okay. So
Naresh, just one question.
yeah.
This string body equal to get body dot to string. What is this function doing?
Okay, so this is the response body. You are converting into a string so that you can display it. That's all you are doing. Actually,
Okay.
this is not very important. You will see better methods, but this is just that one full cycle is completed successfully or not. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm sharing.
Actually,
Yeah.
hello.
Yes.
Yeah, here we are requesting the body, the entire body of
No,
the result.
no. The whole response comes back. From that response, I'm getting the body and displaying it.
Right, but it's just the status that is shown as a result, right? Passed or failed. Like it doesn't really show the.
No, so we are coming to that. This is just a small program to see whether everything is fine with respect to the flow, right?
Okay.
We are still going to do a lot of changes to this program. Okay, so I'm putting the code on the chat window. Please take the code, try it, and then we will start making more changes to it. Please take the code.
So Naresh,
Yeah.
so we are creating new file, right?
Creating a new Java file. Yeah, it is a Java program. Yes.
Yep. don't know why I'm not seeing that run as test-ng.
Did you annotate it with @test?
Yes, I copied everything and it has annotation as well.
Okay, share your screen.
Okay, just a minute. Can you please stop sharing?
Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah, so
Yeah, this is not a Java file, Anamika. This is some text file you have created. You have to create a Java file, right?
right. Okay, yeah. Let me create. So Java.
You have to create a Java class.
Yeah, I mean, of course, right click and say new Java class. Yeah.
Thank you.
You need to change the class name. You have created a folder as rest_1 and you're using rest 11.
So need to change the name of this?
Right. There you have written rest 11, public class rest 11. Make it rest_1, the one which you have created, that class.
Oh, okay.
Can you run the program?
Yes, we ran. It's running.
Okay, can you go and see the output? Go up. What have you displayed? Come down. Okay.
So total run 1.
Yeah, so fine. So yeah, you can stop sharing your screen now. Okay. Now what we will do is we'll make a slight change in our program. Okay, now here instead of 2 strings, let's make it as string. Can you see as string?
Your screen is not shared.
Okay, just 1 minute. So if I share this as string in this line, instead of 2 string, make it as string. Okay, and then try to run the program, and you will see that the data which you get back, it comes in the form of a in the form which you are seeing in the browser, right?
Naresh, one question.
Yeah.
The program is run, that's fine. I just wanted to confirm, how do you take your console from this from below to this upside window?
You just drag it here and there, right? You keep your mouse, you can drag it here and there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So did everyone get it in this format now?
Yes.
Yes.
Kirti?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay, so now we have got our setup up and running. So let's continue tomorrow now. So we will try a lot of all the things that we discussed theoretically, how to get the content of the value, how to verify city is this, temperature is this, humidity is this, status calls, XML format. So we'll see all of that with programming, and still I have not done any validation. I have just extracted the data, right? So tomorrow we will look at good amount of programming to do all the validations for the data that is being returned by the server, and we will write validations around that using TestNG. Okay. Yes.
Naresh,
Yeah.
sorry,
Along with this,
before we, Kirti, do you want to go first?
use the headers also, right? While calling the service or calling the API.
Sorry, are you asking a question, Kirti?
Yes, yes, sir. What I'm asking is now here we just have given the endpoint, right? And we are calling this URI or API. But I think sometimes we may need to
Yeah. So
attach
we
the
will see the
header.
headers also. Yeah, that will come. Don't worry. All that is there. Header sending. When you send a request, what are the header? When you get the response, what are the headers? All those things we'll look at all those examples in some maybe in the next session. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
there is still a lot to be covered. Can you see header examples are there? We look at headers and all those things.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Anybody else? Any question?
Well, actually, I just tried another combination. Instead of using any two string or any other method, I removed it. But the uh, the object that we need to create is of response body type, right? So is that like a
Yeah, so I will talk in details about this, how you extract the content from the body and all that. So this is a object. If you F2 on this is a response body. So how
yeah,
we can use various methods of response body, all that I'll cover in the next discussion that we'll have tomorrow. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, fine. So I'll upload this video in some time. You can go through it if you want to. Okay. Okay, then everyone, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow, same time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.